I want to say a very good morning, very quickly, former Top Gear presenter Steve Berry. Welcome to Morning Glory, Steve-o.
Morning, mate. I was at the Beeb for 10 years, and everything you've said this morning, I would echo.
Really? Genuinely?
They recruit lots of very clever but very liberal lefty lobbies from Oxbridge, and 25, 30 years down the road, they're running the show. So guess what happens?
It's really interesting, actually, because we were talking just then to IDS about good programmes, Strictly, Traitors, Top Gear, to be fair, before you got rid of Clarkson and it all went wrong, not you. And actually, it is the news output. It is governed by this ideology. It isn't impartial. It is biased. And whether it's Davey or it goes higher, there's just scandal after scandal. We wanted to get you on this morning. I can't believe this. Motorist, Rachel Thieves or Richard III, I don't quite know where we've got a picture of Hugh Edwards, but there we go. Richard III, Rachel Thieves, has the budget, of course, coming up on November the 26th, and she's blatantly going to charge us all for many things just to line her own pockets. Is this story true? Motorists are to be taxed for driving in France under Reeves's pay-per-mile plan. Steve Berry, tell me this isn't true.
What's going to happen in time is that we're all going to have one of those black boxes that they force on young people. Yeah. You've got kids about the same age as, I don't know, yours might be younger. Mine are all sort of late 20s, early 30s.
35 to 1, mine.
Yeah, they've had to have this black box in the car. Well, we're the same age. They've had to have this black box in the car that spies on them all the time so they can get a reasonable insurance premium. Wow. That's what the insurance companies want. That's what DVLA want. That's what the government wants. They want us all to have a box in the car which tells them where we've been and when we've been, and they want to send us a bill at the end of the month. And that's what's going to happen. But the last thing, mate, the last thing they want to do is admit that, because we are going to hate it. But that's the way it's got to be, because collecting the revenue on petrol and diesel was absolutely one of the best things they ever thought of. Because like alcohol and tobacco, you pay before you use the thing. Mm-hmm. You pay when you buy a 20 snouts. You pay when you buy a pint of bitter. You pay when you buy a litre of diesel or petrol before you use it. But as we go over to electric cars, which they keep telling us we've got to have, they keep putting the date off because they keep dreading losing all that lovely revenue.
And not because the majority of people want to buy electric cars. Talking of which, my friend, and you know that we wish we had longer, it's just like that on a breakfast show. Nobody better than you to just briefly talk about former Top Gear presenter, colleague of yours, Quentin Wilson, who's died, we heard over the weekend, after a very short illness. We were told this on Saturday, he was 60. I interviewed him many times. Top man.
Knowledgeable, informed, old school BBC, to inform, to educate and entertain. That's what Quentin was. Perhaps the BBC could remember that. Do you know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more. He was always so... I mean, he liked electric cars, so we tended to disagree. He believed that they were the future, to be fair. And he'd be laughing now if he heard me saying this, right?
Yeah, he would. But the thing about Quentin as an advocate of electric cars was people couldn't use that argument that he wasn't a petrol head. No bigger petrol head. But also somebody who saw what was coming and knew that it was unavoidable, so decided to kind of embrace it in a way. Do you know what I mean?
I do,
and
mate.
Advocate, he saw the difficulties of our transition. Mate, we've been using internal combustion for nearly 150 years. It's going to be a very difficult transition. But while a lot of people sort of were in denial about it, Quentin, you know, admitted that it was coming. And do you know what as well I remember about him?
You got 30 seconds, kidder.
He was just funny. This is what... Not a lot of people have said this. Yeah, he was very knowledgeable. Yes, he was very informed. But he was one of the funniest people I've ever worked with.
I always thought with Quentin, he would laugh at himself. Unfortunately, he is the only MP prepared to say what we all want, to scrap the BBC. We say a very good morning to the leader of reform. Nigel, how are you? Nigel Farage.
Good morning. Pleased to join you.
Lovely to have you on, my friend. You've tweeted already saying this is really the last chance for the BBC. and it's time to change. You'll understand the outpouring, Nigel, this morning of people saying this is outrageous, it's been scandal after scandal. Many people as well on the left saying this is all about Trump. Trump has caused this. We talked about sources inside the BBC earlier to us saying that the government lent on Tim Davie. A really unsavoury position for our national broadcaster, Nigel, that quite rightly we can say is no longer impartial, and there is institutional bias, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is just really the final straw, isn't it? And by the way, I mean, I did speak to the president on Friday, and I can't even tell you how angry he was. As he said, is this how you treat allies? I mean, it's a very strong point. It's a very strong point, isn't it? I mean, you know, without America, we are basically defenseless. And to be stitched up by our national broadcaster, really, he was very, very angry. But look, this isn't just about Trump, whatever Ed Davey says. I mean, I remember the Wilson report 20 years ago, where the BBC admitted that their coverage of the European Union and immigration had not been impartial. And we go through the years and we look at climate change, we look at net zero, we look at what they put out from Hamas about what's happening in Gaza. On issue after issue after issue, you see deep, inbuilt bias. Now, I think because the BBC is drawn from such a narrow segment of society, they're so biased they don't even know they're biased just because of the type of people that make it up. So look, I think, look at the numbers. 500,000 people last year stopped paying the licence fee. 500,000 people the year before stopped paying the licence fee. And I really think the institution is in the last chance saloon. It needs a bold, brave, new Director General to come in, somebody with experience of turning around the culture of an organisation, because that's the problem here. It's deeply cultural. And someone with the courage to say that the BBC in the modern world doesn't need to do entertainment. The BBC in the modern world doesn't need to do sport. All of that can be on subscription, and they can compete against online services, ITV, you name it.
Yeah.
Does the BBC have a global role for Britain that's important? You bet your life it does. But that, of course, is paid for with a Foreign Office. And I do think the BBC World Service matters. So the BBC should be pared back to just doing news at local and national level, given a chance to do it impartially, but literally that's the last chance saloon. And the idea that we should all be paying £181 a year, which is the new proposal, no, that's for the birds. This current subscription model is completely outdated. It has to go. Let's have a slimmed-down BBC doing a very basic job and doing it well. And if it can't do that, it will have to go altogether.
Well, I was going to ask you, many people will say, Nigel, that, you know, reform, what is it, 151 polls, you're in the lead, you know, you're going to be fast-tracked to number 10. If that didn't happen, if that change failed to materialise, is there a point in the future where you would make a decision as Prime Minister of this country to defund the BBC?
Well, I mean, I'm going to defund the BBC from its current model, be in no doubt about that. Be in no doubt about that. You know, the BBC, under our plans, would be slimmed down to something very relatively small, but most of it would move to a subscription model to compete in the open market. You know, do I want it to have a basic role for news and current affairs? Yes, but it's going to have to be very, very different to the way it is now.
It's excellent to hear. You've got a couple of minutes, I hope, my friend. If not, you tell me. But I'd like to throw something else at you this morning. I just threw at everybody all morning. This Labour government, which is sort of careering from disaster to disaster, two latest things today. This morning, their latest idea to do with asylum seekers being got out of hotels, so we're not paying £8 trillion a day, is to give those asylum seekers, Nigel Farage, £100 a week to leave the hotels. These are plans being considered by ministers who are saying things like, well, we'll give you £100 a week and you go and live with a family member or indeed a friend, to which I say, if they had a family member or a friend in the first instance, why didn't they go there before the hotel? But more importantly, shouldn't we be spending that ridiculous money on deporting these people or working out a system whereby they're not allowed in this country in the first place?
Yeah, we shouldn't be debating hotels. We shouldn't be debating houses of multiple occupancy. We shouldn't be debating chucking money in their pockets to go and find their own rental accommodation. We shouldn't even be debating this. No one that comes via this route should be allowed to stay. And I thought the supreme irony yesterday, as right across the country, thousands of services took place at 11 a.m., with a 2-minute silence to remember all those who've been lost, most of them defending our country against being invaded. And at that very moment of 11 o'clock yesterday morning, hundreds of young, undocumented males of fighting age were crossing the English Channel.
Do you know, I'm so glad you brought that up, and I hope you've got, it's not long, but there was an interview the other day on Good Morning Britain, which it really, really got me. And I was talking to Denny, our boss, earlier, and I was saying that he was saying he'd been to a Remembrance Sunday thing in his village, and it was more popular than ever, Nigel. And my son, Oliver, the young one, was holding he's in the Cubs, and he was holding the flag yesterday, and I went down, and there were hundreds. And I saw this interview last week on GMB. I just, very quickly for you, this is Alex Penstone, ladies and gentlemen, and my takeaway from this is, how sad is this interview? Have a watch.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Breaks my heart, Nigel Farage, that. I spend time sat here listening to people arguing the toss about things every single day, whether a woman can have a this or... And you think of him and his mates. I wish we could ingrain that in this entitled generation. Sorry, maybe that's old-fashioned.
No, well, I've been involved with World War II and indeed going back World War I veterans organisations for many, many years. Indeed, I was with a sprightly 99-year-old Royal Scot veteran yesterday. So I've spent a lot of time talking to that generation and indeed the one before. And let me tell you, Alec Penstone is far from being on his own. They look at what's happened to the breakdown in our society. They look at what's happened to the country, and they are very, very sad indeed about it. And what I thought was most interesting was the reaction of the presenters. That was not what they wanted to hear, was it?
No, mate. Well, we both know ITV. Listen, so grateful for your time. We know how busy you are. Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed for joining us, Leader of Reform UK and MP for Clacton. I'll bring my lefty back in. You and I probably wouldn't agree on an awful lot politically. We're mates, though. I'm going to say something that probably sounds a bit strange. Do you not think in this mess that is our political arena today, he sounds more prime ministerial by the day? Nigel Farage, because I do. Ooh.
He's changed. I don't know, but Prime Ministerial...
What do you mean he's changed?
I think he's had to focus. I've always had a theory, and I don't think it's quite changed. I don't think he really wants the job. I think there's an element of fear, because it's a hell of a job to take on in this current climate. I don't know many people that would want the job. I think he's probably not. I don't want to disagree out of sort. I think he appears to be, and I believe is the only person who could either deal with that fear or is prepared to deal with that fear. I think he's. I'm not saying he's fearless. Nobody is, but I certainly believe that he has in his head the ability to take all comers on. But of course, I mean, it never ceases to amaze me. Christian and I were talking about this the other day. It was 16 months ago when Keir Starlin walked into Downing Street with 100, the biggest majority since the beginning of time. He's a dead man walking after what, 70 weeks? I mean, it's extraordinary. Cholera is more popular than
Sorry, can we take that up? Christian, you're not listening. He's literally just said, Matthew Talbot, that cholera is more impressive than...
But I think the thing for Nigel or anyone else, I don't think whoever is the next Prime Minister will succeed, because the economic mess that will be worse than what Labour inherited, I have no doubt it will be a worse situation. The entanglement of immigration law in this country, so if he's going to put that front and centre the way Labour have put front and centre, we're not going to tax people, knowing damn well they'll have to, he's going to struggle if he doesn't succeed at that. And I just think it harms his, I suppose, his reputation. For his supporters, it would be easier for him to go down as the best Prime Minister we never had, and the establishment threw everything at me, and therefore they locked me out, and this progressive alliance came together, and all that sort of stuff.
Don't you think there's something to be said, though, for standing in front of the British people and saying, right, and I've said it for ages, This is what I believe in. If you vote for me, I will take you on this journey, good or bad. There will be days when we succeed and days when they fail, but I will point out all of that. I'm a human being who makes mistakes. This is what I'm going to do. I think the British people would buy that right now. I think the British people would go, to be fair, he's been screwed there, or he's made a mistake there. I think this belief that politicians present themselves as perfect picture cards, and it doesn't work like that. You're right. Financially, we're screwed. Morally, we seem to be screwed. Internationally, we seem to be. I mean, there's so much wrong. You could argue it completely, flip it and say, if you're 100% in the mire, even if he improved things by 20%, wouldn't that go down as a success story?
It's about feeling. People have got to feel better, either within themselves or within their pockets, and at the moment people don't. Whether they will in the future, I don't know. And the other thing that I used to warn about in opposition is we could do all the right things in the world, and we haven't. But if we had, there's other variables you can't control. Ministers involved in all sorts of scandals. Not necessarily Starmer's fault, it's morons on the front bench.
Well, no, I'm going to argue with you there, and you're going to hate me.
No,
Louise Haigh, the first one he had to get rid of was a known convicted felon.
But whether he's even across, yes, maybe that's on him.
I mean,
maybe
that's
that's
not a great
on him.
example, is it?
No, but you've got Russian Hour Ali.
What about Tulip Sadiq, his best mate, being done by the Bangladeshi authorities? He must have known that. He spent many an evening drinking with her.
I know, and I suppose all you can do is take people on good faith. If they say, but what about, you've got Israel, you've got Palestine, you've got Ukraine, you've got this to deal with as well, unfortunately. And that's the stuff you can't control. I used to think Russia would be the one for us. It's actually turned out to be Israel-Palestine.
That's true. And of course, you're waking up to the main news story, front of the Sun, Beeb's billion-dollar bungle. Sunday night saw the resignation of Director General Tim Davie and Head of News Deborah Turness. And to be fair, the BBC in meltdown. Yesterday, BBC Chair Samir Shah apologising that his news department saw fit to doctor Donald Trump's speech. Have we still got that? Because it's one of the most amazing pieces of footage. And I'm going to play it again. I haven't played it all morning. In 2024, before the presidential election that Trump won, the BBC saw fit to change what he'd said about the Capitol riots back in 2021. What you'll first see in here, and I'm sure you've seen it, but let's refresh our memory, is what Panorama played, after which you see what Trump actually said. Have a watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Listen, credit where credit's due. To be honest, we spent most of last evening and most of the night trying to find anybody who would justify or support the BBC's current situation. So I'm delighted to say a very good morning to a former BBC producer, John Mayer. Welcome to Morning Glory, John. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Hey, look, we're in the land of fantasy here now. The land of fantasy and playground bullies. Trump threatening to sue the BBC. What is this all about? The BBC should just attempt to sling his hook, because he does this to all the American networks. He sued them all for $1 billion and ended up accepting 15 million in some cases. He's got PBS and NPR on its knees, absolutely on its knees. Trump doesn't believe in opposition. He's a playground bully. So but why should we fall into line with him? Look, the Director General's resigned. He's the fourth of the last five who's gone out in a coffin or been measured for a coffin, and he's talking to the staff this morning about that. Poor man. I know him. He's a good man, and he's been a good DG. It's a shame. Was there a row last week? Are the BBC governors, have they been taken over by a right-wing cabal? Did they stop the Director of News actually apologising? Look, it's a simple, indefensible mistake. A mistake made by an independent company, a stupid mistake, which the BBC should have apologised 6 months ago when it was first pointed out. Not yesterday, not the day before, but it was 6 months ago. Just say, look, we're sorry, we made a mistake, we should never have transmitted this, we're very sorry. So, they allowed it to fester, so it's crazy. But, you've got to think, what's the BBC for? Do we want the BBC? It's 104 years old, the licence fee is up next year, then the charter's up the year after that. I've edited a book called Life After the Licence Fee. We need to think about a licence fee. What do we want? Do we want to pay 180 quid next year, or do we actually want to invent a new kind of licence fee where you have a basic licence fee and you use the iPlayer as a way to subscription? Because this is an organisation which makes brilliant, brilliant programmes and which can charge for them, and it should do.
Welcome to Morning Glory, John. If I could get a word in edgeways, my friend.
Of course,
yeah?
of course you can.
Yeah, brilliant. Because your protestations are well noted, and I hope you will do me the credit of having my say in return, because you, for me, epitomise what's wrong with an organisation that still believes that the British people consider you to be an unbiased, straight down the line, institutionally unbiased organisation. And however much you want to jump in, let me tell you, the majority of Great Britain do not feel that. And I'll tell you why. I said yesterday that the minute Trump did what Trump's going to do, and I'll take your point, that would deflect, because all the people like you and that dreadful Nick Robinson and all those people would jump up and down and say, this is Trump and his allies trying to control our mainstream media. This is disgusting. Let me tell you, I don't care about Trump suing you. I don't care if the government lent on Tim Davie and Deborah Turness. What people like you and your ilk will not understand or will not answer is this institution that is supposed to represent the British people have covered up, lied, cajoled and done whatever they can. This is not, by the way, just Donald Trump. This is Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace, that vile anti-Semite Bob Villan, where your DJ, by the way, DG, was actually at Glastonbury for 5 hours. Martin Croxall being done by BBC Verify for daring to say pregnant people, because in the world I live in, only a woman can get pregnant. This is your organisation who paid a Hamas official's son to voice a documentary to prove yet again of your anti-Jewish and Israeli approach. John, listen, you're a nice man, but the truth of the matter is the BBC's coverage of the US presidential election was found to be markedly anti-Trump and pro-Harris. An internal review, a senior BBC editorial advisor said yesterday. You can sit there and say the BBC does great programmes, but I can sit here and tell you that the majority of Great Britain consider it an overpriced, highly biased, woke waste of space. And the people in the BBC, unless you realise that and use this as a seminal moment, it won't survive, pal. It's not a level playing field. That's my take.
Jeremy, if you stop ranting. Look, I mean, look, this is a brilliant organisation which last week got.
It's not.
Can I have my say, please?
Well, you haven't answered anything I've said, have you?
Last week, 12 million people watched the final of The Traitors. You know, this is an organisation which produces 9,000 hours of
This is an organisation that doctored the speech of a political opponent from an ally across the water, and its head of news, Deborah Turness, who, by the way, will turn her fire on many execs, let me guarantee you that, strode into the building yesterday and saying, I'm proud of our journalistic output. How can you be proud when they doctored something? What?
Who cares what Donald Trump thinks about the BBC?
Right, and you've just summed up. But hold on, no.
Why doesn't Donald Trump concentrate invading Venezuela?
I will actually lower your microphone. You have just proven that yourself and people like you at the BBC, you just did it. You just said, who cares what Donald Trump thinks? That tells me that you and your ilk, no, hear me out, please, have decided that you don't like Donald Trump. I'm not sticking up for Donald Trump. What I'm saying is the BBC should allow the British people to decide what they think of Donald Trump without doctoring his speeches to make their own thoughts be pushed upon people. That's fair, John.
This is the British Broadcasting Corporation, not the Trump Broadcasting Corporation. I, by the way, don't work for them, haven't worked for them for decades. You know. But you know, well, why doesn't Trump concentrate on invading Venezuela or world peace? You know, what's the BBC got to do with him? He is a bully and a thug, and we should not tolerate it.
But you haven't answered the question. You have successfully blamed an independent company for the mistakes of editing. That's absolutely. Well, you know what? Deborah Turness and her bosses should be over this.
They should have spotted it, yes.
I ask you this. I just made a point which you refused to answer. There is deep-seated views, whether they're anti-Trump, anti-Nigel Farage, anti-Brexit, anti-the window in my studio. The fact is, Is it not the job of your national broadcaster, John? This is what I'd like you to answer me without starting on your Trump derangement, whatever you're going to go off about. Is it not the responsibility of your national broadcaster to put in front of the British people both sides of an argument, whatever that argument is, about the flag, about Armistice Day, about whatever it is? Isn't it up to the broadcaster to then say to the people, there are both sides of the argument, we live in a democracy, make your own mind up? That's the first question. Second question is, you have to admit the BBC hasn't done that repeatedly.
Look, the polling evidence doesn't back you up, Jeremy. People still trust the BBC, whatever you say.
No, they don't.
The BBC bends over backwards, to be fair to people. It bent over backwards on Brexit and other things. It bends over backwards.
It bent over backwards to look after Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace and Bob Villan, but it didn't bend over backwards to look after Martine Croxall when she dared to say pregnant women. Come on, John.
That was just stupid. I mean, and the Trump mistake was absolutely stupid. So look, this is a national broadcaster, 104 years old, which produces brilliant programmes, which is what they should do.
Are you programmed by the BBC yourself? Have you actually got a chip inside you that just keeps repeating the same stuff? Because it doesn't add up, John. It doesn't add up.
Jeremy, I've just edited a book called The BBC After the Licence Fee, which says, look, the BBC's got to look at life after the licence fee. It's not going to be there forever and a day.
No.
You have to think, and you have to think what's going to happen, and that's down to us, the British public, and the government. But
do you think the BBC licence fee? Do you think the licence fee can continue when you bear in mind that 25,551 people last year were prosecuted for non-payment? Those numbers continue to rise. Nigel Farage said yesterday on this show that the BBC needs to understand that it should play on a level playing field like everybody else. It should be defunded and it should stand on its own 2 feet. And before you jump in, what was your example, traitors? I add Strictly. I add your coverage of the Lionesses World Cup final, 12.2 million people trumping you. I know you don't like that word, but I would suggest that if you became a subscription service, John Mayer, your very good programmes would encourage people to pay for it. But I bet you any money, whatever you tell me, people would not pay to watch your news because your news is institutionally biased. Fact.
Keeps you honest, Jeremy. They keep you absolutely honest. Without the BBC, there wouldn't be room for things like Talk and things like GB News, because the BBC is straight down the line. There's room on the right for people like you, for people GB News, for Farage. So,
there's room for people like me, Farage and GB News on the right. You're doing it again. The BBC...
Well, you are on the right, aren't you?
How would you describe the BBC?
Straight down the line, too straight down the line.
You've got to be winding me up. Have you taken something overnight, man? What's wrong with you? What?
The BBC is institutionally fair.
It's institutionally biased. How can you possibly... Right, so explain to me how a senior BBC editorial advisor yesterday said that its coverage of the US presidential election was found to be markedly anti-Trump and pro-Harris. That's an internal review. Can you please stop spouting the same rubbish and explain that to me?
That was Michael Prescott, former political editor of Sunday Times, who said that. And the BBC should take account of that. And they should have taken account of it 6 months ago when he said it, instead of allowing it to...
What about allowing Bob Villan to shout death, death to the IDF? How did you feel about that? Was that acceptable straight down the line, was it?
That's a mistake.
Oh, it's another one. So we've got two, yeah? What about Martine Croxall? What about Martine Croxall saying pregnant woman and being censured for daring not to say pregnant people? Was that a mistake?
That's just stupid. That's just the BBC thought police being stupid.
Oh, right, so that's three of them. What about Hugh Edwards? Right, hear me out. I haven't finished. Hugh Edwards, who is still getting his pension, the pedo, and walking around. Why doesn't the BBC do everything in its power, hear me out, rather than, I don't know, internally reviewing Martine Croxall? Why don't you get the thought police at your institution to get the money back of the British taxpayers who are paying for that paedophile to walk around the United Kingdom? Can you explain that to me?
I agree. I agree.
So that's four things. So we basically agree. Brilliant.
You're on a roll, Jeremy. You're on a roll.
Yeah, so I'm not wrong. The thing that's really got you going this morning, though, is Rachel Reeves hinting she'll scrap the two-child benefit cap. We say a very good morning to political and economic commentator Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, how are you?
All good, Jeremy. How are you doing?
Nice background, Sonny. You sat in your room there, or literally? Look at that. It's looking great, isn't it? Good man. Well done. Jamie, I don't want to complicate the two-child benefit cap, but basically, in this country, we have child benefit. You get an amount for the first child, an amount for the second child, and there's always been a cap because there is an argument that says, by all means, have a family. But if you can't really afford it, it shouldn't be down to the state for you to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 kids. Rachel Reeves came to power with Keir Starmer saying, we will not raise income tax and we will keep the child cap. That's the way it's going to be. Well, they reckon on November the 26th, not only is she increasing income tax on working people, but she's now going to say that she would scrap this. I just want to play you a couple of things. This is Reeves from last November, peeps. Have a listen.
Now wipe the slate clean under the mismanagement and the chaos of the previous government. It's now on us. We've put everything out into the open.
Okay.
We've set the spending envelope for the course of this Parliament. We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
So you're saying, actually, there's not going to be an Oliver Twist moment. You're not going to come back and say, we want another tax rise. Or if you did, that would be a huge failure for your government, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to be able to write 5 years' worth of budgets on this show today, but what we have
I'm just
done,
saying,
there's
will
no
there
need.
be more tax rises?
No, you're right, Trevor. There is no need to come back with another budget like this. We never need to do that again. We've now, Trevor, set the spending envelope for the remainder of this Parliament. We don't need to increase taxes further.
Jamie, that was last November. This, though, my friend, was yesterday, Rachel Reeves.
I have been really clear that we are looking at both taxes and spending as part of this budget. The economic circumstances have deteriorated since a year ago because of those conflicts, because of those trade barriers. And as a result, we are having to look at taxes and spending, and it's got to be both of those things. And the speech I made last week was about setting the context for the budget, which is a difficult one. And I think people can see that and they understand why this is a difficult budget and why there are things that have happened in the last year that we couldn't have foreseen a year ago.
Jamie Jenkins, she says there the finances have deteriorated. I would suggest that's because of her inept stewardship of the nation's finances. What do you say?
Yeah, so we've only got to look at the facts of the matter on this one, Jeremy. So if we look at the OBR, so the kind of the budget watchdog, what they did is they do their forecasts in the spring and in the autumn. And before Labour came into power, they were forecasting between August 24, so about a month after Labour got in, and September 25, the latest figures that we've got, they forecast that the country would be borrowing around 102.6 billion. Still a large number, huge number. But we then have the facts of what actually happened. It was 194.4 billion. So pretty much you've got a 92 billion pound black hole created by Rachel Reeves. Now, OK, why have we borrowed so much more money? Well, we had the pay deals for the unions.
Yep.
Inflation's higher than some comparable countries across Europe. That's in part to do with some of the government's policies. The jobs tax is one of them, where they put the cost of employment on. So Rachel Reeves' own policies are having a direct effect on the borrowing figures, which is why they're coming back for more money. And then the figures that we've had up this morning, Jeremy, quite shocking numbers. So we've now had 170,000 job losses on the payroll since the election.
Yep.
We've seen about over 60,000 in the last 2 months alone. So it's getting worse. It's not improving, it's getting worse. And again, you can link that back to the jobs tax. So when you've got more people out of work, you've got less tax coming in. So then what she's looking to do is tax us more, basically people who are in work, because of the ineptitude of her government. And one final thing on it, Jeremy, which is quite interesting. If you look across the country, there's job losses across all of Britain. If you really zoom in, though, the biggest percentage loss is in Westminster. So maybe we could do with Starmer and Reeves be added to the payroll job losses as well.
I couldn't agree more. It is frightening because a lot of people will say, oh, you're being really unfair. And I wouldn't be... Look, listen, I failed Maths O-level about 6 times. I'm used to this, right? But she doesn't come across as adapted at all. Ineptness is something that seems to follow around. When I see her being interviewed, she looks like she's caught in the headlights. She seems to backtrack on a daily basis. I think the only reason she survived is I think that probably the Prime Minister knows that she and his futures are inextricably linked. But I don't have any... And, you know, a lot of people say, well, she's the first woman chancellor. Brilliant, really respect her. Margaret Thatcher was the first female prime minister, right? Look at Theresa May. She was appalling. I just think this woman is not good enough at her job. And Jamie, you know, we said earlier about, you know, what the doom and gloom. It is doom and gloom economically. It is hard for people, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you look at those job losses, the biggest group that's been hit hardest are the people under 35. You know, we've seen over 220,000 job losses since the election. They are the future, and those are the people who are losing jobs. And they talk about coming in with new policies to get younger people back into work. Well, the jobs tax and the significant national insurance rises for the younger people looks good on paper, but when you increase the cost of people who haven't generally got that much experience, those starter jobs, people aren't going to employ them. And ultimately, we've seen 88,000 jobs lost in retail now since the election, 74,000 jobs in hospitality. You know, these are those entry-level jobs that get people going. And if you haven't got that, what's the future for the young people? Now, young people tend to vote for socialism, but all they're getting is really unemployment instead. And I think to the point you said with Rachel Reeves, she's gone down this road. She can't backtrack and say I've made mistakes, because she just loses the confidence of her party completely. But she's already lost the confidence of the country. So I think she's just got to go.
Couldn't agree more. This has been rumbling on for days. Overnight, Donald Trump confirming on Fox News that he will indeed sue the Beeb for $1 billion. This was Donald overnight. Have a watch.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. You know, why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it. And their top echelon,
Director General and the CEO,
this is within one of our great allies. You know, this is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess. But that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical. And they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up. But it was very dishonest, and the head man quit, and a lot of the other people.
Simon, I've been saying for about 3 days that taking Trump aside, because, yes, of course, he's going to do that because that's Donald Trump. What really sticks in my gut is that all of these lovies come out. Lisa Nandy's saying they're a light on the hill. John Simpson, you know, we're under attack. Nick Robinson from the far right. No, let's list it again, shall we, people? Jimmy Savile, Hugh Edwards still getting £200,000 a year. A Hamas documentary we paid as licence fee payers to a Hamas official's son. Two news stories a week having to be retracted because they're biased on the Gaza war. Anti-Israeli. Bob Villan stood on stage at Glastonbury being streamed shouting death, death to the IDF. The list goes on. Martine Croxall, that fantastic female newsreader, being censured by BBC Verify for changing pregnant people to pregnant woman. Simon, the BBC's rotten. It's biased, isn't it? This is beyond Trump, isn't it, pal?
Yes, absolutely. This is the British Broadcasting Corporation damaging our reputation across the world. I mean, this has damaged our relationship with the United States and the president there. And it goes beyond that, doesn't it? It's not sustainable. The BBC in its current form is not sustainable. And I suspect any political party that comes out and says they will cut the licence fee, they'll make it subscription or whatever else, radically reform it, will get a lot of votes at the next general election. And that's what reform stands on. I'm not sure if any of the other parties will, but we can't go on with the BBC in its current form.
I think, and Nigel said it yesterday, and you're saying it today, I think you know, not even about reform. Somebody needs to go, the playing field needs to be level. You're getting £5.39 billion a year. There's definitely a left-wing ideology, a centrist liberal left-wing ideology. You're supposed to be the state broadcaster. You're supposed to be straight down the middle. You are patently not. And that means that those of us who are paying for you have a right to complain. That's how I see it, Si.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the good news from this is that it's flushed out all the lefty liberals, hasn't it? We know who all they are, and we know what they stand for. But it cannot carry on in this current form, and there has to be radical change. And that's what the public are calling for. They've had enough.
You're a good man. We love to have you on. Are you going to stand for reform in the next election?
Oh, well, that's to be seen. If they want me, then I will do. But I mean, I've got plenty on my plate as it is.
Lammy has confirmed that 91 prisoners, do you know what? I'm going to play this to you. 91 prisoners since Labour came to power have been released by mistake. 3 are still at large, including an Albanian drug dealer who's been on the run for a year. This was Calamity Lammy with the poppy at the wrong angle yesterday in the Commons.
We understand that there are 3 mistakenly released prisoners currently lawfully at large. Their prison records show none of these are convicted sex offenders. I have been informed, Mr. Speaker, this afternoon that HMPPS are investigating a further case of a potential release in error on the 3rd of November who may still be at large.
May still be at large. Not sure. Brilliant. Vanessa Frake, former prison governor, a very good morning to you. I'm sorry, Vanessa, you and I know each other. You're laughing. You're much more balanced than me. He has to be the most incompetent idiot I have seen at the dispatch box in my 60 years. He doesn't even know, Vanessa Frake, whether they've escaped. 91. Come on. It's appalling.
Well, thank you for putting a smile on my face first thing this morning, Jeremy, for showing that. Look, the man is absolutely, completely clueless. You know, I watched him on Mastermind and that did it for me. But look, this government will just not get a grip of the prison service with him in charge. And, you know, if I was one of his advisors, I'd be going out the door pretty quick. Because
what is it about him that is? How does he not know? Is my first question. But secondly, this man who pontificates, Deputy Prime Minister, 91 prisoners under Labour's jurisdiction have been released, Vanessa Frake, by mistake. Can you explain to me how the hell that happens?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult to explain how it happens. The fact that it has happened is what's the issue to me. I mean, I think, you know, David Lammy said, last week, that he was going to introduce this fantastic IT that was going to sort sentence calculations out, because at the moment, you know, it's still being done with pen and paper and a calculator by a human, and that's open to human error. But he says he's going to put, within weeks, IT in. He just does not know how the justice system works. That's not going to happen, I guarantee now. And this guy is just going from bad to worse. And honestly, when he was appointed Justice Secretary, my heart sank. What's worse, actually, is if something happens to Starmer and he takes the role of Prime Minister. That would do it for me. But look, I think his lack of knowledge of the prison estate, his lack of consultation with prison governors, his pontificating about nothing is ridiculous. And he's looking a laughing stock. But worse than that, he's making the prison service look a laughing stock.
I agree with that. And we haven't got an awful lot of time, but let's also, I mean, he was at pains to point out these weren't sex offenders. These are still serious criminals endangering the public, as Robert Jenrick said just now. That is a fact. The British public have a right to go, hold on a second, we're about to be taxed even more. And people who break the law, who might eventually be prosecuted, end up in jail and they can almost walk free. I mean, I don't know why Wandsworth's even got a front gate. I mean, literally, the public deserve more, don't they?
Oh, completely, absolutely. You know, the mantra, the prime statement of the prison service, Jeremy, is, you know, to keep in custody those sent by the courts to protect the public. And clearly, you know, this is failing and failing badly. You know, 91, we're not even up to March 26, so God knows what the final figure's going to be. But this guy has either got to go or he's got to get a grip. That's his choice. Personally, I think he's got to go.
Some breaking news overnight from the States, more Epstein leaks.
You look very calm today. This was a very low start.
Oh, sorry, I woke up at 4 a.m., but you know what? I turned on the Jeremy Kyle program as soon as you were on, and I and I'm
4 o'clock and you want my sympathy. It was up at 2:15.
Oh, come
What's
on.
going
Oh, come on.
How many hours sleep did you get?
I think about 5, maybe.
Yeah, but jet lag's awful. We're so chuffed to have you here. I know you're working really hard on a documentary. Yes, overnight, one of the main news stories, a new batch of Jeffrey Epstein's emails claiming, which is a shot in the arm for everybody like Victoria Hervey and all these people who said it's fake, that the Andrew photo with Virginia Giuffre, which emerged in 2011, is, Kinsey Schofield, real.
Yeah, and it's matter of fact, the way he puts it in the email. He says, you know, there's a picture of them together. You know, I don't think this can hurt Prince Andrew anymore. I think I've said this to you before. I feel like I'm not defending him.
No, I know what you're going to
But
say.
is he a scapegoat? You know, why are we only hearing about British men when this is an American, this is truly an American-born crime? I think that a lot of this is distraction, but, you know, Prince Andrew should have never said, I never met her, I don't remember meeting her. He shouldn't have alluded to the fact that the image wasn't real or had friends speak out. Remember they did that bizarre reenactment where people tried to fit in the bathtub together and they were wearing masks of Andy and Virginia. So, like, I just think that this was all handled so poorly. He should have never sat down with the BBC. I know the BBC's getting a lot of play lately, but he should have never done that.
Well, you would never sit down with the BBC because they probably edit it completely differently. But I'm going to take your thing a stage further. Emails overnight as well confirming that Peter Mandelson, the ex-ambassador that the Labour Party employed to the United States, sacked some weeks ago, was still in contact with Epstein in 2016 after the financier pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor in 2008. So it's been on Mandelson, it's been on Andrew, and I take your point, both of whom vile human beings, haven't got a moment for them. Donald Trump, though, also overnight, we're told, this is really interesting, Epstein claimed that Trump spent hours with Virginia Giuffre at his house. I asked Charles Fellon earlier about, you know, an analyst from America, a host of a podcast, I think SOS America, did he think this would impact on Trump? And he went no, because he can sell it as the Democrats simply stirring the pot. My question
Which he
then
already is, yes.
How can Trump get away with it then, and everybody else
I'll tell you
not?
exactly how Trump can get away with it, because Virginia Giuffre released, there was a book released post her death, her unfortunate suicide, and in that book she says that Trump was nothing but friendly to her. She doesn't allude to the fact that there was any type of inappropriate relationship whatsoever in that book. And so I think that that's how Trump gets away with it. She had nothing to lose when writing this book. She goes into detail about multiple other individuals, including former Prince Andrew, throughout this book, in very embarrassing and vulgar allegations. So if she had something to say about Donald Trump, this would have been the time, and they likely would have gotten away with it if she did have anything to say about Donald Trump. So I think that tells us everything we need to know. She did work for him prior to meeting Jeffrey Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. So I think that they, you know, might have had a friendly relationship. He, you know, she was one of the cute girls running around his estate.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Just very quickly before we move on to the royal family, it's not going to go away, this Epstein trial thing, is it? The email thing. It's just there and there.
The slow leak?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. We're going to get more. I mean, people are combing through these emails, and the reason I think that we haven't had a major Andrew dump is because there are certain times where Epstein uses code when talking to Virginia. And so people are going to have to comb over these emails, and it's going to be like a game of Tetris or a puzzle where they figure out that this means that and that means this, and this must, you know, that this must be in regards to Andrew and potentially the access that they did have to the royal family and royal family estates. It's all very embarrassing.
It's hugely embarrassing, and let's bring it to the royals. There was a sneak preview of the newly renovated Forest Lodge. Kate and William moving in, or have moved into their forever home on the Windsor estate. Honestly, you're so good at this. Kate's tastefully discreet decor. All you could see was a wall, 2 pictures and some curtains, for Christ's sake. Come on.
I know,
saw it.
But it was giving...
The carpet might be garish. Nobody could see anything.
Well, nothing would be more garish than Princess Diana's Kensington Palace suite. Do you remember? It was like pink. There were pink couches.
Been inside it.
Oh, really? Really?
Absolutely.
Will you do you have time to tell me what was that?
Not
oh my
on
God.
air, but I have.
Oh my gosh, how fun!
Been in the Queen Mother's bedroom.
Oh, yeah, I did know about that. You have told me about that. But this, I just think it's sweet to see what their new life's going to be like. This is going, like you said, the reason why royal watchers are excited about this is because this is the family settling down. They're about to raise teenagers. You know how exciting and stressful that can be.
I'd say stressful. I wouldn't say exciting. There's nothing exciting about raising teenagers. What are you talking about? They do this. What? Why have you stopped conversing with me? You know, there's a series over here called Kevin and Perry. They're like, when you become a teenager, literally, that is what you get 24/7. Just grunting unless they want something.
Well, you know, it looks it just looks cozy, and that's what we love about William and Catherine. They are, they're similar to the Queen, there's stability there, and we
absolutely.
feel comfort in them and their family. We love them and their family, so I think that's why this is relevant to royal watchers.
I tell you what I do think as a royalist, I think they are the absolute future of the monarchy. I think that Iron Kate, as you and I have called her for many months and years, will save the British royal family, because all of the stuff with Harry and my next subject, and you think about all the problems that have happened, Andrew especially, it's just fueled the argument for the Republicans. I'll do it. Meghan Markle's been branded an inexperienced cook with no table etiquette. Why am I doing this for a living? As she shares a recipe for cream cheese bagels. Right, anybody who eats a cream cheese bagel, that's weird enough in itself, isn't it, right?
What? I love cream cheese bagels.
With what?
I just like, no, I do a bagel, and I do like an...
Oh, you're such an inexperienced cook.
I am but I would tell you I'm in it. I would not try to release a lifestyle line. Like if
yes,
it's not,
you would if I gave you the
If it's not microwavable, I don't touch it, which is probably why I'm going to die alone. I cannot cook you a meal, okay? But
you're not going to die alone, though, are you? It's just choices.
Thank you. Oh, wow, okay, we're getting pretty deep here.
No, I'm not talking about... I was actually talking about food.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, yes. I was talking about microwave. You could learn to cook and put it in the oven. You've gone straight into your personal life and looked at me like it's all my fault. What's going on here?
So, I mean, I think when we look at this headline, obviously we just say duh, but it is, I think that it's relevant in the sense that this is a person that's trying to convince us that she's the next Martha Stewart, or that she's always elevating things. Well, you're going to need to change the channel. It goes beyond flour sprinkles, girlfriend. It goes beyond cream cheese and then throw in some fruit on top. We need to see more from her if we're going to believe that she's an expert in this industry.
But I mean, so a lot of people will text after this segment and they'll say to me, don't you just feel, though, that by talking about her, you are perpetuating the fact that this odious human being wants attention, and that if we didn't talk about her cream cheese bagel, or what was it last week, her flavoured water that she passed off as mulled wine, that she then just sort of, in terms of relevance, curl up in the corner somewhere?
Well, this audience is, you know, they're much smarter than the average audience, which we know. And I think
you said that was such a little...
No, I'm serious. No, I'm serious. Because what I'm saying is what they are not saying, because they're focused on real common sense news. They're watching talk. What they're not saying is People Magazine and Us Weekly Magazine and all of the outlets that are pandering to this grifter. And so what I would tell them is that we're trying to hold her accountable. Yeah. And while all these other people are falling over for her saying, oh, it's a new wine launch, it's a new this, we're raising our hands going, but it's been available for 3 weeks and it hasn't sold out. So how successful truly is this brand? Or we're saying, what qualifies you to be an expert in this industry? I would simply say we're trying to hold her accountable when there are other outlets out there that are giving her the time of day in a legitimate way.
I'm not even going to comment about watching her trying to put a bagel with cream cheese in it. And also, just to finish, I would put the difference between our future Queen, Princess Catherine, and her exemplified again yesterday. While Meghan Markle's talking about I can't even say it, Princess Catherine's talking about this Christmas Carol concert that she does every single year, and the charities that benefit and the kids that get involved, and how it brings communities together. And that surely, however old-fashioned you are, is what being a royal's about. It's not about launching chances for you to make money. Me. Who's that for?
Meghan. Me. It's all about me. No, you're absolutely right. Catherine, we just found out that her Christmas Carol concert is going to be recorded December 5th.
Are you going?
I wish I mean, please, Catherine, hi, I love you. I mean, I wear my hair like you, I wear my Spanx like you, but
Sorry, can we just, sorry.
No, but let me get to it.
No. Can we just have God, I've done like the cover of the Archbishop of Canterbury, like I'm going to baptise somebody. I think it is fundamentally wrong for you to imply on Talk that Princess Catherine wears Spanx.
Well, no, tights. I should have said tights. Tights. Body-hugging tights.
Mark, who pushes the buttons, wears Spanx. That's another story. That's only privately.
We love Mark. But, you know, I think that we might have had this conversation earlier where Meghan sat down with Fortune's most powerful women and said, I have a Christmas special coming out in November. Then she changes her tune and releases the information through Netflix that it's coming out December 3rd. And I immediately said, you're trying to conflict with our Princess of Wales in her annual Christmas Carol concert. And we just got the date, so... Told you so, is basically what I'm here to say, and I just am sick of the game of these two grifters.
A second heavily edited, misleading clip aired on the BBC on a different flagship show. We know about the Panorama misinformation, which led to an apology from the corporation, which was posted just 24 hours ago. Well, they might need a second apology because Newsnight, 2 years previously, broadcasted, again, a misleading, poorly edited clip in regard to the January the 7th demonstrations in the capital. Let's take a listen to BBC's Newsnight programme's edited Trump footage. Take a listen to this.
We're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
OK, now that's gone out. Whilst on air, a former Donald Trump advisor who became a critic of Donald Trump, Mick Mulvaney, a guy I've interviewed many times, he knows his onions, live on air on Newsnight, he called out the misinformation of a clip that he'd just heard. Take a listen.
Your video actually spliced together the presentation. He said, we're going to go down and we're going to cheer on our senators and our House members. And then it actually goes on to say in some of them we might not be able to. And that line about it, we fight and fight like hell is actually later in the speech. And yet your video makes it look like those two things came together. That's the type of messaging here that so many people in my country find frustrating, is that it's hard to actually get the facts.
Let's get reaction now from a former top BBC presenter, Sally Jones. Sally, a fresh headache. The BBC may need to issue a second apology given the fact that another of their iconic brands, this time Newsnight, mired in this misinformation scandal. What a hot mess.
It really is a hot mess. I mean, it couldn't have come at a worse time. I'm just wondering whether the Telegraph has got any more and they're just sort of bringing it out in dribs and drabs, although I think that this came out because a whistleblower at the BBC, having seen all the row over Panorama, then remembered virtually, well, a very similar edit of the same clip to give that same falsification of what Trump was actually saying. I think they're going to have to do the mother of all grovelling apologies second time around. I also think that they're apparently next week's Wreath lectures are pretty much focused on what a dreadful man Trump is. So if I were them, I would get somebody else to take a totally different topic, or the same person making the lectures, because it's just going to drive Trump wild. I mean, Trump generally has a great regard for Britain. We've seen how much he loves the royal family, how much he adores being part of that inner circle, being invited to Windsor, invited to to their various great social events. But I think it may be that he doesn't sue, that he takes the magnanimous high line here and says, oh, well, I love the Brits. But I have a horrible feeling that he will at least make some moves in the suing direction, because he's got pretty good form for suing media outlets and even people like universities who are mostly not overburdened with money to be able to pay the, what could be biggish compensation. I don't think for a moment that in any court, Florida or Britain, he'd get anything like $1 billion, because it will be so difficult to prove. And America, of course, have very strong press freedom regulation over their media, the freedom of the press. So I think that it will be particularly difficult in Florida. I don't think Trump will really want a long and expensive legal trial that he might not win, however much he would like to give the BBC a bloody nose. But it's not looking great for them. And I do think they need a root and branch reform of their whole editorial policy and standards in news and current affairs.
And a second doctored clip is damning, isn't it, from 2 years before the airing of the Panorama documentary, Sally, with a guest on the show who had become a Trump critic, Mick Mulvaney, Donald Trump's former chief advisor, chief of staff, calling out the misleading clip live on air with a minimal reaction from the presenter and no inquiry following that broadcast.
It was extraordinary at the post-mortem the following day that nobody took it seriously, because Mulvaney, as you say, is a wonderfully experienced, balanced man. He'd already resigned from being, the acting White House chief of staff, so he was not a Trump apologist at all at that time. And yet he still immediately spotted it. It immediately rang alarm bells in his head. And I'm surprised, because I've worked a lot with Kirsty Walk. She's a hugely experienced presenter. I was surprised that somebody like that, even if she brushed over it during the actual programme, that she didn't at least flag up that, that this had been something that was brought to everybody's attention instantly. It was played. It wasn't something that didn't come up on air. It was there for everybody to hear. So yes, it is looking bad. And the problem is, it makes it more difficult for the BBC to claim that the Panorama was an honest mistake. The fact that it had been done twice, first of all on the Panorama by an independent production company, but prior to that on Newsnight by the in-house team. It was not an independent production company. These were BBC staffers and people within the BBC that were making that particular package.
What do you make of former BBC stars current actually, Nick Robinson and John Simpson, who have circled the wagons to defend the BBC? Are they in denial about the fact that this corporation is in the grip of leftist groupthink?
I think they're totally in denial. You see these sort of lefty worthies like Polly Toynbee, Alistair Campbell, and some of the BBC staffers like Robinson and co. And they just think that it's a right-wing conspiracy, a right-wing plot. It's not. Obviously, there are people on the right who are not entirely delighted with the BBC and believe that it is a bit of an echo chamber. But there are plenty on the left who also, and in the centre, who also think that the BBC has behaved incredibly badly here. I think that the Robinsons of this world are trying to say nothing to see here, pass along. And it's just not going to wash. More and more things are coming out, and this tends to become a flood. When you get a couple of bad stories like that, it's almost like a house of cards. More very often tend to come out. I wouldn't be at all surprised if other things surface, putting them in an even more difficult position. It's not good enough just to say, oh, it's those nasty Tories, they're just conspiracists.
Sally, always a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll catch up soon. Former BBC star Sally Jones damning about the corporation. In the spirit of balance, the BBC would argue that they produce hundreds of hours of content every week, the vast majority of which is balanced and fair, that the BBC is the most trusted news source, not just in the UK, but around the world. They could also argue that with millions of viewers and listeners, most of what they do is going down very well with the public. So I'll offer that by way of balance.